Have you ever heard the thunder of a rare old boat engine firing up? You have now. That moment when the ignition roars and your ears practically vibrate with excitement. We're diving into vintage powerhouses, generated to blast you right out of your seat. These are the machines that stand out from the crowd with their growing presence and legendary builds. Let's steer straight into these classics, one by one, and see what makes each of them so enticing, and sometimes controversial. Let's begin with the S1 Spiel. A sleek Scandinavian racer that famously sported not just one, but two 27-litre Rolls-Royce Meteor V12 petrol engines. Think of it as double trouble with a royal heritage, since the Meteor was derived from the legendary Merlin engine used in British fighter planes. The roar from these beasts could put any modern muscle craft to shame. Each Meteor was capable of producing well over 600 horsepower, which was downright absurd for a boat of its time. The controversy? Some boat enthusiasts say it was overkill, a raw demonstration of too much power squeezed onto a hull that could barely handle it. Others argue that it paved the way for more powerful hydroplane designs, proving that a big engine can be tamed with enough know-how and a strong hull. Whatever your stance, hearing those V12s thunder into life must have felt like standing next to a Spitfire on water. Next up, the good old Chevy 454 Big Block, a staple of American horsepower. This engine is practically the definition of raw, unfiltered V8 thunder, beloved for that deep rumble that resonates through your entire ribcage. Originally found in classic muscle cars and trucks, it naturally found its way into performance boats. Middle-aged hot rodders still talk about it in hushed, reverent tones. On paper, the 454 may look straightforward, 7.4 litres of displacement, robust torque, and parts available on every street corner, but it's the soul of the thing that gets people. In many marine applications, you'd see anywhere from 330 to 450 horsepower in stock form, with torque numbers that easily cross 450 pounds-foot. Critics complain that it's not the most fuel-efficient or refined machine, calling it the gas-guzzling dinosaur. But that's half the fun, right? It's an icon. Tuning shops love to bore it out and push horsepower into the stratosphere, creating a symphony of that signature V8 roar. Controversial or not, the 454 Big Block is the epitome of old-school American power. If you thought a pair of Packard V12s was impressive, try cramming 4 of them into one boat. That's exactly what happened with Miss America X, another hydroplane built under Garwood's relentless pursuit of speed. This boat housed an almost unbelievable quartet of Packard V12 engines, each often around 1,800 cubic inches and capable of about 800 horsepower, combining for a total output that soared well beyond 3,000 horsepower. The aim? Shatter speed records and leave the competition wallowing in a torrent of wake and exhaust fumes. Critics at the time declared it unhinged, arguing that no hull should be saddled with so much torque. Yet Garwood's unrelenting drive for velocity made Miss America X a legend. The controversy primarily involved around safety and the intense stress placed on the boat's frame. Some spectators showed up just to see if the craft would hold together or tear itself apart. Ultimately, Miss America X demonstrated that sometimes excessive ambition pays off if the engineering can keep up. Today, merely imagining the cacophony of 4 roaring Packard V12s firing up is enough to make even the most jaded gearhead grin like a kid in a candy store. When it comes to vintage outboard racing engines, few can touch the legacy of the Quincy Looper. Developed by the Quincy Welding Shop, these two-stroke brutes rose to fame in the 1960s and 70s, often featuring displacements ranging from about 20 to 44 cubic inches. Depending on the exact setup, a well-tuned looper could push anywhere from 50 to over 100 horsepower, astonishing for such compact power plants back then. The key was the loop scavenging system, which allowed the engine to inhale more air-fuel mixture for greater combustion efficiency. Translation: more power. Critics pointed out the less than angelic emissions, as two-strokes tended to spew unburnt fuel into the water long before environmental concerns took center stage. But in racing circles, the performance was undeniable. These engines revved to sky-high RPMs, screaming like banshees across the racecourse while leaving behind a swirling cloud of exhaust. Some called it noise pollution, fans called it pure adrenaline. Either way, the shrill wail of a Quincy Looper at full tilt became an unforgettable anthem for outboard enthusiasts, carving out a spot in the dockside gossip mill that remains legendary to this day. Slide over to a 1978 Sanger jetboat, and you enter a realm of retro cool that screams disco might be dead, but horsepower isn't. Sanger was known for crafting hulls that could handle serious grunt from big engines, often a Chevy 454 or Ford 460 pumping out 400 to 500 horsepower, paired with jet drives for that ultimate drag boat feel. This was the era of muscle cars on water, and the 1978 Sanger was right there in the thick of it. People who still own these classics rave about their durability and how the fiberglass hulls can be refinished to near showroom shine. The controversies revolve around jet drive inefficiencies at lower speeds, not to mention the wave of noise complaints from weekend warriors who like to let that engine bark at 6 a.m. Despite all that, there's nothing quite like the whoosh of water being sucked in and spat out by a well-tuned jet boat. It's part throwback, part heart-pounding thrill ride, and entirely unforgettable when you hear one spool up. If Sanger was the king of the drag strip on Waterlurk, Tahiti was its equally charismatic cousin. The 1974 Tahiti jetboat had this undeniably funky style, often with those psychedelic paint schemes reminiscent of the 70s. Many came equipped with big block Chevys or Fords in the 7+ liter range, frequently pushing 400+ horsepower. Some folks criticized the build quality, claiming they were lighter and more prone to hull stress over time. But the lighter design also meant a serious power-to-weight ratio that translated into blistering speed. Fire one up today and you'll notice heads turning at the launch ramp, partly due to the nostalgic vibe and partly due to the unmistakable snarl of vintage horsepower. Sure, fuel consumption can be harsh on the wallet, and some people will question the practicality, but practicality was never the name of the game here. It was all about having a blast with a big, loud motor out on the lake. Now for a similar boat that's rare, old, and still packs a punch. The 1969 Rayson-Craft. These California-built classics often ran big block V8s, think Chevy 427 or 454, churning out anywhere from 400 to 500 horsepower. Rayson-Craft hulls were known for their ability to handle the monstrous torque, allowing speed enthusiasts to push the limits on open water or the local drag boat strip. The controversy stems from ongoing debates about structural integrity in older fiberglass designs, with some skeptics insisting these boats weren't built for repeated high RPM punishment. Fans counter that proper maintenance and occasional hull reinforcement can keep a Rayson-Craft humming like new. Fire one up today, and the roar of that big block through open headers will echo across the lake, making you the star attraction, whether people love it or not. There's a timeless cool factor here. A retro vibe meets raw power, reminding everyone that sometimes old-school engineering can still make waves. We can't talk about legendary powerboats without mentioning Mr. Detroit III. An iconic hydroplane that dates all the way back to the early 20th century. This craft was powered by some serious engine tech for its day, though over time it saw various power plants come and go. The greatest claim to fame here was Garwood's obsession with speed records. He used powerful Liberty V12 engines in certain versions. These typically displaced around 27 liters and could produce roughly 450 horsepower each, which were formidable. Some folks say that the trials pushed the boundaries of safety. Others maintain that it was the pioneering spirit that made America's boat racing culture so vibrant. Controversial or not, Mr. Detroit III symbolizes the reckless joy of strapping a huge engine onto a boat just to break a record. Hearing an old Liberty V12 grunt into action was like stepping into a piece of mechanical history. The craft has undergone restorations, and while not everyone agrees on the best engine for historical accuracy, the original spirit remains, outrun everything else on the water. Now we shift gears to something decidedly more exotic, the Russian Zvezda M50. This massive air-cooled radial engine was intended for torpedo boats and other military applications, making it a real oddball in civilian circles. Talk about a conversation starter at the marina. The M50 can displace over 50 liters, and some variants reportedly produce around 2,000 horsepower. The multi-bank radial design is about as subtle as a marching band at midnight. Some historians question the reliability of these engines, especially under the higher stress of high-speed civilian racing. There are also rumors that spare parts are as rare as hen's teeth, meaning that if you blow a gasket, good luck finding a replacement. Still, the allure is undeniable. Crank this up and you'll get a throbbing rumble reminiscent of old Soviet aircraft, sending vibrations through the water and possibly rattling your fillings. It's an engineering curiosity that really underscores how boat enthusiasts will go to any length to stand out, even if it means hunting down a behemoth from behind the old Iron Curtain. We'll pull a major gear shift now and talk about the Fairbanks Morse 6-cylinder diesel engine that was commonly used in ships. The most famous series, often referred to as the Model 38, could displace well over 100 liters in a 6-cylinder opposed piston configuration, generating anywhere from 900 to 1,600 horsepower depending on tuning. This behemoth was designed for continuous duty maritime service, powering everything from submarines to large commercial vessels. The controversy? Some argue these engines are far too heavy and cumbersome for smaller crafts, labeling them as impractical dinosaurs. On the flip side, fans praise their bulletproof construction and near-immortal lifespan when maintained properly. Firing one up is like igniting a rolling earthquake, complete with that deep, thunderous diesel growl that leaves no doubt you're dealing with industrial-grade might. Sure, it's not your average day cruiser's choice, but if you want to bring a piece of ship engineering into the boating world, the Fairbanks Morse 6-cylinder is the very definition of going big or going home. The famous Tower of Power is Mercury Marine's legendary inline-6 outboard line, which ruled from the late 50s into the 80s. Why the nickname? Take one look at the tall, vertical cylinder stack and you'll understand. These engines typically displaced around 93 cubic inches, with horsepower ratings ranging roughly from 90 to 150, depending on the model and year. They were lauded for their strong acceleration and top-end punch, given their relatively compact size. The controversy arrives when modern outboard aficionados point out that older two-strokes are comparatively smoky and not exactly eco-friendly. But if you ask classic boat buffs, the Tower of Power's distinctive whine is pure nostalgia. Part of its charm is that it bridged the gap between small, modest outboards and the monstrous V6 or V8 outboards that came later. Fire one up today and you'll likely get a few folks wandering over, reminiscing about their dad's old fishing rig or the speedboat that used to zip around the local lake. Sure, it's a bit of a relic, but for many, that's precisely the appeal. Combine two Suzuki Hayabusa motorcycle engines in a V8 configuration and you get the Hartley Enterprises Hayabusa H1 V8. Yes, it's as wild as it sounds. With a combined displacement hovering around 2.8 liters, the H1 V8 can churn out around 400 horsepower and rev to stratospheric levels. Picture the screech of a high-revving sport bike, then multiply it by 8 cylinders. It's lightweight too, which is crucial for performance boats looking to shave pounds wherever they can. Critics claim that such an engine is too high-strung for marine use, especially if you plan long hauls at lower RPMs. Overheating concerns have been raised, as well as parts availability if you blow something. On the flip side, the thrill factor is off the charts. The horsepower per pound ratio is outstanding, and the engine's willingness to rev adds a whole new dimension to boat performance. Hearing that shrill wail out on the water is a surefire way to turn heads, or cause the neighboring slip owners to question their life choices. Now we jump into modern madness. 7 Marine 627 horsepower outboard made headlines as one of the most powerful outboards ever put into production. At its core is a 6.2-liter supercharged GM V8 block that's been heavily marinized. Strapping 1, or 2, or 3 of these onto the back of a center console is like rocket fuel for the rumor mill at the marina. Some say it's simply too much, that nobody really needs a 627 horsepower outboard. But that's the thing, this is boating we're talking about, where need is rarely part of the conversation. There were controversies about whether the weight and torque stress might be too high for many transoms, but for those who can afford it, the raw push is electrifying. Rumor has it that a well-tuned 7 Marine 627 can make your fishing run feel like an offshore race, with a supercharger whine to remind you this isn't your neighbor's old outboard. Finally, we arrive at the Mercury Verado V8. Modern engineering marvel that has captured the hearts of performance enthusiasts and casual boaters alike. It's the culmination of decades of Mercury know-how, featuring a 4.6-liter block with super strong internals and advanced computer controls that manage everything from idle quality to fuel efficiency. Models often range from 250 to 400 horsepower, hitting that sweet spot of muscle meets refinement. People love its balance of power and polish. It can idle quietly at the dock, then roar with authority when you punch the throttle. Critics argue that the complexity means higher potential repair costs, and older mechanics might struggle with so many electronic sensors. But from a performance standpoint, the Verado V8 is tough to beat. The torque curve is broad and confident, making everything from towing tubes to offshore runs feel effortless. And that's the key, it's a beast that's also manageable, blending a silky smooth ride with that exhilarating V8 growl. If you're a middle-aged American who remembers the smoky two-stroke days, firing up a Verado V8 feels like stepping into the future, complete with the kind of excitement only big engines can deliver. Thanks for riding along on this tour of rare old boat engines and a few modern monsters. Jokes aside, these beasts are more than lumps of metal. They're pieces of history and passion, each with a story to tell. If you enjoyed this deep dive into thunderous startups and you'd like to come back for more ear-shattering, eye-popping marine content, hit that subscribe button. There's plenty more under the hood, or should I say hatch, and I can't wait to share it. Hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you on the next ride. Stay roaring, everyone.